Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radha Jaya Vishnupadana Mahamsa Parivraj Kacharya Rastara Shata Shishi Madhavai Chana Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Swami Biti Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Vishnupadana Mahamsa Parivraj Kacharya Rastara Shata Shishi Madhavai Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Swami Prabhupada Ki Shri Guru Parampara Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Sri Rupa Sri Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sri Shad Goswami Prabhu's Ki Prem Sikho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Sri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Sri Giri Govardhana Ki Sri Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Sri Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Sri Nalachar Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Gangamai Jamunamaya Ki Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Yugadam Harinam Sankirtan Ki Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Sri Kartik Mas Ki Nitai Gaura Pramanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Mantra Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. Please distribute books. Tamil Krishna Goswami speaking. When we first began the Radha Damodar party, our idea was to make as many devotees as possible by holding festivals at which we chanted Hare Krishna and distributed prasadam. After Krishna sent so many nice young men, it was difficult to keep them always engaged. Then suddenly a letter arrived from Srila Prabhupada in which he said that the kirtan of book distribution was better than the kirtan of public chanting. This transcendental instruction changed the course of our Radha Damodar party. From then on, I concentrated more and more on book distribution, and this gave Prabhupada greater and greater pleasure. I had been in India for 4 years, but our main program had been enrolling life members. But now that I was in America, Srila Prabhupada was reminding me that preaching meant to distribute his books. So I became inspired that our party should distribute so many books that it equal all of the other book distribution of the rest of ISKCON worldwide. Day and night I was thinking of how to get out more and more books, and thus overflood America with transcendental literature. Srila Prabhupada wrote me that this was his real ambition, to turn all of America into Vaishnavas. Until we formed our Radha Damodar party, the method of distributing books had been an individual would be given either a large, medium, or small book according to the size of the donation. But Prabhupada told me that of all types of book distribution, to distribute his large books was most important. So I was always considering how to increase the number of large books. The problem was that people were willing to give small donations, but rarely would they give us large enough contributions to award giving them a large book. Then Krishna gave me the idea that by adding together a few small donations from a number of persons, at least one of them could be given a large book, while the others could be given a Bhakti Godhead magazine or a small book. By this method, we were able to increase the distribution of big books tremendously. Prabhupada fully approved of this idea. As long as the book fund received payment for the books, Srila Prabhupada allowed us to pass them out as quickly as we could, irrespective of the size of donation. Thus, our Radha Damodar party was able to distribute as many as 50,000 big books in a single month. Srila Prabhupada showed special interest in the Radha Damodar party and approved loans from the BBT for purchase of more buses, thus creating a Sankirtan army traveling in renovated Greyhound buses. By the end of 1974, the Radha Damodar party had 3 buses, vans, and numerous men. Prabhupada called the buses moving temples, and he urged the Radha Damodar devotees to continue their program with a certainty that they were pleasing Lord Chaitanya. I am glad that you have understood the importance of my books, Prabhupada wrote. Therefore, I am stressing it so much. Let everyone take these books. Srila Prabhupada ki. Transcendental Book Distribution ki. Shri Radha Damodara ki. Takes 5. I think so. You gave class yesterday, do you know?
You gave class
Yeah.
yesterday?
Okay. Okay. Want to have a look from there?
It's this verse, Nabi,
All right.
Yata, Bila.
Okay, no problem.
Can you see that?
Which one is it?
See.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 4, the characteristics of Rishabhadev. Text 4. Nabhistriyata bilashitam suprajastvam avarudyati pramoda paravivalo gadgadaksharaya kiraswaram grihita naraloka sadharmam bhagavantam purana purusham maya vilasitamatir vatsatateti sanaragam upalalayan param nivritim upagata. Please repeat. Nabi, King Nabi. 2. Certainly. Yata abhilashitam. According to his desire. Suprajastvam. The most beautiful son. Avarudya. Getting. Ati pramoda. Of great jubilation. Vara. By an excess. Vivala. Being overwhelmed. Gadgada aksharaya. Faltering in ecstasy. Gira. With a voice. Swairam. By his independent will. Grihita. Accepted. Naraloka sadharmam. Acting as if a human being. Bhagavantam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purana Purusham. The oldest among living beings. Maya. Ayoga Maya. Vilasita. Bewildered. Mati,
Mati,
his mentality.
his mentality.
Vatsa,
Vatsa,
my dear son.
my dear son.
Tata,
Tata,
my darling.
my darling.
Iti,
Iti,
thus.
thus.
Suanuragam,
Anuragam,
with great affection.
great affection.
Upalalayan,
Upalayam,
raising.
raising.
Param,
Param,
transcendental.
transcendental.
Nirvritim,
Nirvritim,
bliss.
bliss.
Upagata,
Upagata,
achieved.
achieved.
Translation. Due to getting a perfect son according to his desire, King Nabi was always overwhelmed with transcendental bliss and was very affectionate to his son. It was with ecstasy and a faltering voice that he addressed him. My dear son, my darling. This mentality was brought about by Yogamaya, whereby he accepted the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Father, as his own son. Out of his supreme goodwill, the Lord became his son, and dealt with everyone as if he were an ordinary human being. Thus King Nabi began to raise his transcendental son with great affection, and he was overwhelmed with transcendental bliss, joy, and devotion. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. The word Maya is used in the sense of illusion. Considering the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be his own son, Maharaj Nabi was certainly an illusion, but this was transcendental illusion. This illusion is required. Otherwise, how can one accept the Supreme Father as his own son? The Supreme Lord appears as the son of one of his devotees, just as Lord Krishna appeared as the son of Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. These devotees could never think of their son as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for such appreciation would hamper their relationship of paternal love. Translation again. Due to getting a perfect son according to his desire, please repeat. King Nabi was always overwhelmed with transcendental bliss and was very affectionate to his son. It was with ecstasy and a faltering voice that he addressed him. My dear son, my darling. This mentality was brought about by Yogamaya, whereby he accepted the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Father, as his own son. Out of his supreme goodwill, the Lord became his son and dealt with everyone as if he were an ordinary human being. Thus King Nabi began to raise his transcendental son with great affection, and he was overwhelmed with transcendental bliss, joy, and devotion. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swabhadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Guru and Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shakhanvitam Shah Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapa Taruvyascha Kripa Sindhuyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'm just going to go back and read, excuse me, read from when, the beginning of chapter 3, when we hear how Maharaj Nabi originally prayed to Lord Vishnu to have a son. So Maharaj Nabi, the son of Agnidra, wished to have sons. Therefore, he attentively began to offer prayers and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the master and enjoyer of all sacrifices. Maharaj Nabi's wife, Merudevi, who had not given birth to any children at that time, also worshipped Lord Vishnu along with her husband. So then Maharaj Nabi engaged his priests in performing a sacrifice for pleasing the Supreme Lord. Shukadev Goswami continues, in the performance of a sacrifice, there are 7 transcendental means to obtain the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 1, by sacrificing valuable things or eatables. 2, by acting in terms of place. 3, by acting in terms of time. 4, by offering hymns. 5, by going through the priests. 6, by offering gifts to the priests. And 7, by observing the regulative principles. However, one cannot always obtain the Supreme Lord through this paraphernalia. Nonetheless, the Lord is affectionate to his devotee. Therefore, when Maharaj Nabi, who was a devotee, worshipped and offered prayers to the Lord with great faith and devotion, and with a pure, uncontaminated mind, superficially performing some yagya in the line of pravagya, the kind Supreme Personality of Godhead, due to his affection for his devotees, appeared before King Nabi in his unconquerable and captivating form with 4 hands. In this way, to fulfill the desire of his devotee, the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifested himself in his beautiful body before his devotee. This body pleases the mind and eyes of the devotees. So then, when the Lord Vishnu appeared at that time, then the priests of the king offered very amazing prayers that gave the indication that they were also pure devotees. Quite often when the Lord appears in various different pastimes delineated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, then one pure devotee will offer prayers to the Lord. But it's very rare that you hear the priests offering prayers out of pure devotion. So here in this purport that we're studying today, then it's described that out of his supreme goodwill, the Lord became the son of Maharaj Nabi and dealt with everyone as if he were an ordinary human being. So it's not the other citizens of the kingdom are not described in this pastime, but we can understand that the fact that the priests were all pure devotees and their prayers were really very, very beautiful and offered with great humility. That the Lord Yogamaya made this arrangement that Maharaj Rishabdev, who's an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, was accepted by Maharaj Nabi as his son, and Yogamaya covered Maharaj Nabi's consciousness so that he wouldn't understand that his son was the Supreme Lord, although he actually had desired a son like the Supreme Lord. So he was getting, he was having that desire fulfilled. Without his affection being interrupted or being disturbed by feelings of awe and reverence. So when someone desires a son, they may express that they'd like a son like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But it doesn't mean that they want to feel constantly in great awe of the Supreme Lord. It's already difficult enough to bring up a child. There's already enough anxiety there. Just imagine how much anxiety would be that not only do you have to care for your child, but you have to care for your child and at the same time offer respects, knowing that it's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it would certainly be a situation of great anxiety, not just of anxiety, the natural anxiety of a father, but it would be an overbearing anxiety, that everything that the child did, the father would be thinking, this is the Supreme Personality of God. He wouldn't be able to offer his affection in that way. And yet at the same time, this also reminds me often of the dealings that we have with our God brothers and God sisters, and also with our spiritual masters, and with Srila Prabhupada's interactions with his devotees. So sometimes, as we know, Srila Prabhupada acted, he always acted as a representative of the Supreme Lord. But sometimes he understood it was his duty to act as the founder Acharya of ISKCON, to set the example not just for his immediate disciples, but to set the example for the members of ISKCON and even the whole world for the next 5,000 years. So if he saw some discrepancy in the dealings of his disciples, he would act as the Acharya and use that interaction with his disciples as a way to instruct the whole society and to leave a legacy of instruction, for the future generations. Actually, I heard a very striking example of this when I was listening to a recitation of Jamuna Devi Dasi's biography by the author of that biography, Dinatarini Devi Dasi. So she related a pastime in New Delhi when deities were being installed in New Delhi. And Jamuna Devi Dasi she'd been overseeing the deity worship in the Krishna Balaram temple, or at least overseeing the arrangements for the deity worship there for more than a year. And she was, it was very, very difficult service for her. And then she was invited to go to the installation of the deities in New Delhi, where Srila Prabhupada would be attending. And this was the first, Srila Prabhupada hadn't been in India for a whole year at that time, and this was the first time that she was very, very happy to have the opportunity to have darshan of Srila Prabhupada, but she wasn't involved at all in the temple management of New Delhi. She'd had no involvement in the temple management of the opening or the installation. And so she was sitting in the crowd of devotees, and then Srila Prabhupada was leading a kirtan, but then just after a few minutes, Srila Prabhupada stopped the kirtan, and he looked directly at Jamuna Devi Dasi and said, Krishna was left on a fence post, unattended. And he wasn't speaking to anyone else, he was speaking to her. And she was like, she just wanted to let Srila Prabhupada know that she hadn't been involved in any of the organization of the festival. So she said to Srila Prabhupada, I'm just here as a guest, I'm just here as a visitor. Srila Prabhupada said, you left Krishna, like speaking to her and nobody else, you left Krishna sitting on top of a fence post. Said, when we invite the Supreme Lord to reside among us, he's coming to accept our service. And as long as we offer him service in a mood of devotion, then he's personally present to reciprocate with that service. But if we just treat him like a statue, then he'll remain a statue forever, and we'll never have that reciprocation. So then, so Srila Prabhupada, and then Jamuna Devi Dasi later, or even at that time, even immediately she understood that she was actually responsible, because she was the only devotee who Srila Prabhupada had really entrusted with developing the deity worship in India, and that Srila Prabhupada wanted her to take that responsibility. And also he was instructing the whole of ISKCON through that interaction. Knowing that because she was in that position of authority, and that that interaction would be significant and would be recorded in the minds of many devotees, where if he'd just been saying it to everybody, then perhaps no one would have taken it sufficiently seriously to actually remember it and record it. But Jamuna Devi Dasi recorded everything. She had like so many notebooks. So Srila Prabhupada knew that this is a person who will take this instruction seriously and also will actually note it down accurately. So Sri Jamuna Devi Dasi also relates another pastime that Srila Prabhupada instructed her to observe the correct etiquette between husband and wife while she was serving in Vrindavan, even though she was for almost a year, she was the only female devotee in the team of devotees who were building and establishing the deity worship in Krishna Balaram temple. And Prabhupada said she had to act as a perfect Vaishnav wife to her husband and observe all of the etiquette that would be expected by the Vrindavan, the Brij Vasis. So this was very difficult, because previously she had like very close relationships with all of the devotees, like Shyamasundar Prabhu and other devotees who she served with for many years, very close friendship. And then George Harrison came to Vrindavan, and he actually, when he saw Jamuna Devi Dasi, he like ran over to her, gave her a hug and kissed her. So it's like Jamuna Devi Dasi, she was horrified, obviously, absolutely horrified. So this is actually our situation. This is our situation as Vaishnavas. We've inherited this culture, this sadhachar of learning how to interact with our friends and our children and our parents, respecting them all as being Vaishnavas, and at the same time being friends with them at the same time. Just as Yogamaya came here to impose this kind of illusion on Maharaj Nabi, which enabled relationships to be sweet, and it also enabled others, like it's described that the Lord became his son and dealt with everyone as if he were an ordinary human being. So although the priests and Maharaj Nabi were capable of interacting with the Supreme Lord with the utmost respect, it's not that they were in danger of, in one sense, committing offenses, but Yogamaya made it more relishable for them and more relishable for the Supreme Lord. But it's described that others also saw him as an ordinary human being. So as preachers, we've got three. There we've got, this is our situation. So we need to pray. We can pray to Yogamaya also that somehow or other we can maintain like nice, loving relationships with the devotees, offer the correct respect to one another, and also give it an impression to the people that we're presenting Krishna consciousness to, give them an impression, that we're a community which simultaneously expresses affection between ourselves and also is establishing a very advanced philosophy and a very progressive response to the different issues facing the world. So we definitely need help. We need to pray for the protection. We need to pray for the Lord's protection. Actually, Srila Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita in the first chapter, where Arjuna refers to Krishna as a tutor. Srila Prabhupada Arjuna refers to Krishna as a tutor, O infallible one. Please draw my chariot between these two armies so I can see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil son of evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. So there in the purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna is known as a tutor because he never fails in reciprocating with his devotees. Krishna will reciprocate with us. Krishna is reciprocating with us. He's reciprocating with all of our desires. And especially for those devotees like Jamuna Devi Dasi and other devotees who have taken positions of responsibility in very difficult situations, then Krishna especially reciprocates with them because their task is actually impossible. It's actually impossible, to be able to maintain all of those different relationships and satisfy, your friends, your seniors, your juniors, your spiritual authorities, the acharyas, the Supreme Lord, the deities, the guests, the government. It's not actually possible. It's only possible it's not possible for anyone except, the Supreme Lord. And just this pastime also of Radha Damodar, of Mother Yashoda trying to bind Krishna. So Mother Yashoda, she was in this situation. She wanted to protect Krishna from. She felt that Krishna was being too naughty, and that he was becoming a bad boy, and that he was. If he became a bad boy, then he would get into bad association with other bad boys. So she was determined to give him a hard lesson, so he wouldn't become a bad boy. She actually became. She was criticized afterwards by the other residents of Vrindavan, fellow gopis, that she was being too harsh with Krishna. So Krishna, but Krishna relished that. So similarly, even if sometimes it may seem that we're being treated very harshly, but Krishna is pleased that his devotees who are taking responsibility are actually really thinking about their responsibilities. And it may be that sometimes a devotee who is, perhaps very weak or not, isn't very strong anyway, may feel like that they've been offended or that they've been hurt by another devotee who's just having to he's having to lay down the law, you could say, for future generations. But Krishna is a tutor, so Krishna will protect all of the devotees, all those devotees who remember Krishna as a tutor. Krishna is protecting all the devotees. He's fulfilling the desires of all living entities. So we can pray to Krishna that we can remember that he is fulfilling our desires. So I'll stop there. There's probably lots of things that could lead on from this nice verse. It's very nice that this verse is like on the first day of Kartik. And it's exactly about the last sentence of the purport is, these devotees could never think of their son as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for such appreciation would hamper their relation of paternal love. So Mother Yashoda is the embodiment of that rasa, but it's present in all of. It's not just present in paternal love; it's also there. That paternal love is there in our relationship with devotees, our juniors and our seniors. So there's lots of ways lots of lessons we can learn from this. So are there any questions regarding this?
Not a question, just I like that point we're making from the exchange between Srila Prabhupada and Mother Yamuna. So a lot of lessons can be taken from that. For example, one lesson could be that Prabhupada was, through her, telling the lesson that anybody can speak up if you see something wrong regarding mishandling the deities, mistreating the deities, or whatever. It's not that only course, we have to be, if someone's very junior, they have to be careful not just to become an upstart. But Prabhupada has shown that even someone who wasn't responsible for taking care of it, he expects everybody to be responsible for the devotee.
Yeah, well, in that sense also, then we can have that faith that Krishna is a tutor, that, we can pray to Krishna. As far as I can understand, I'm going to say something to protect you and to protect the disciplic succession. As far as I understand, I'm doing this for the right reason.
Also, because she was an older devotee, one of the first disciples, then Prabhupada also credited her that you're an older devotee. You should have seen what was wrong here. You say something that was kind of surpassing management, and the principle of devotion and looking after Krishna properly, making the product. So whether one was in a position of management or not, or so-called position of responsibility, it's up to everyone to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And to do something about it, not just to say something about it, but to do something themselves. Because also, people can just sit back on the sidelines and comment on everyone else's faults in the devotional service. The Prabhupada was also saying, you're also personally responsible for this.
Yes.
And I thought there was a lot of lessons in there, probably many others I didn't see.
Yeah. It was very... it's a very... It was like to actually hear it was like really painful. You were like right there, like feeling it, you could feel her just, because for her to... normally if it had been in Krishna Balaram temple or somewhere, she wouldn't have like come up with an excuse. She would have immediately, and it wasn't really an excuse. It was just like stating a fact. There was no question in her mind that she was like responsible. Well, she wasn't feeling guilty. She was like feeling that Prabhupada had just like misunderstood. But even just in the course of that interaction, then she understood why he was doing it. I thought that was like a real indication of like her level of purity, that even though she felt innocent, but then when she saw, then she was thinking, why is Prabhupada doing this? And then she became aware. So actually, I was thinking yesterday when we were listening to Manidhar talk about Sankirtan and talk about maintaining the enthusiasm, and I was thinking that all of that time and energy that we spent in maintaining that enthusiasm in in a situation where you had to act from second to second, then we can try to employ that kind of determination and attention in all of our interactions with devotees, and protect ourselves from committing offenses, and protect ourselves from being sort of overwhelmed by comfort seeking or by ignorance, and that perhaps we can taste some of the bliss of Sankirtan in our dealings with devotees on an everyday basis, understanding that Krishna is a tutor, and that Krishna will make the arrangements by which that interaction will have a positive result and will be sweet, even though perhaps sometimes we'll need to go through hours or even days of when it seems like an impossible situation. I was trying to take it positively and apply it to my present situation. Initially, it seemed like I was kind of a little bit feeling, how is this relevant to my situation, and think, okay, well, how can I make it relevant? So that was the lesson I learned. Yeah.
There's another nice point you made, which was that if the Lord didn't cover Nabi with Yoga Maya, then he wouldn't actually be able to function, and the Lord's pastimes wouldn't be able to take place because it would be so full of awe and reverence. Then he wouldn't actually be able to do simple fatherly duties.
Yeah.
So it's nice to brought that point up that actually he wouldn't even be able to function properly.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, and that particularly because he was a child, you know. If he was, when it's not that Maharaj Nabi could reciprocate appropriately with Lord Vishnu when he appeared in the sacrificial arena, because the appropriate mood was awe and reverence. But in our dealings with devotees, then we need to think, okay, what is the appropriate mood now? You know, like, is the appropriate mood to relate with this devotee as a friend? And just like Srila Prabhupada, you know, devotees, Srila Prabhupada would often be very, very informal and friendly with his devotees. But then when he expressed some disappointment, then the devotees were like immediately like, okay, now we have to adopt awe and reverence. And so, and it's not a kind of, it's not an incompatible thing to be able to do that. Perhaps a parent has more natural ability to be able to do this because they have to do it with their children, you know, they're especially children of different ages. So the whole pastime kind of helped me think that, that Krishna's not going to allow, if we're making a sincere attempt to have the appropriate relationships, then he won't allow us to make offenses that are going to destroy that interaction, so that the preaching can go on and so that the deity worship can go on. So
isn't that a freedom of choice? How can the Lord not allow you? You've got freedom to choose how you act.
Well, that's assuming that we're making a sincere attempt at all times to act appropriately, and to remember that if we do that, then the Lord is protecting it, even if it seems like sometimes there is like even if it seems like there's an kind of a very difficult conflict that doesn't seem to have a solution.
Suppose if someone was sincere, and if they did make some offence or some transgression, then we would make amends with it. So then, in that way, the person is sincere, so they would know they should make some apology or offer some service as a means of nullifying that transgression. So if they're sincere, they would do that anyway. So it's not necessarily that the dealings will be perfect, but part of the perfect dealing may be that we might even inadvertently or unknowingly commit some offence, and then if it becomes known to us, then we want to clear that.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm definitely, you know, I can speak about it because I know that, you know, I know that I haven't acted correctly on so many occasions, and I can only assume that I'm still permitted to interact with devotees because someone else is praying for me with more sincerity than I'm able to pray for myself at present. So this is also a good reason to stay in the association of devotees unless you get thrown out. You know, if you think that somebody knows, at least if you've got the intelligence to realize that you're not the most intelligent person in the temple, you know, you may so just stay. If there's somebody you think is more intelligent than you, just stay until they throw you out. You know, like, and then
Yeah, but isn't it better to maybe reciprocate if you think that someone's got some well-meaning for us and acting for our, say, our well-being, then rather than just keep on behaving wrong until someone finally can't tolerate it anymore, is it not better to learn how to reciprocate with that?
yeah, well, you need to approach the person. If you feel like you can't, you may feel like that you can't reciprocate, that you're not qualified, you're too much in the mode of ignorance. You may feel like that, but if you think that someone's more intelligent than you, then you have to accept that they can see your situation better than you can see it yourself. So then you need to approach that person and ask for advice. And certainly the Lord's, that's another lesson we get from Sankirtan, that it may seem like nothing, it may seem like we're just trying our best, we're chanting our best, we're doing everything that we've been told to do, but still nothing happens. But then one thing one instruction in that situation is approach your older devotee, approach another devotee. And and it may be that devotee just tells you all of the things that you've already thought of, but the fact that you've approached that devotee, Krishna's pleased with that, and therefore you're getting some empowerment. So that's all. Even if you feel like you can't take the advice that you think somebody's going to give you, then just by having the association of that person, and by hearing even if your mind is telling you that instruction, just continue, just pray hard, even if your mind's telling you that. But if you go to the other person, then by their association and their purity and sincerity, then you'll get the instruction coming through Shabda Brahma rather than from your mind. And also Krishna will be pleased, so you get Krishna's blessings.
That's actually the teaching of Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Krishna, Arjuna approached Krishna saying he was bewildered, his intelligence was bewildered, he didn't know what to do, please instruct me. So then Krishna tells him what to do, then he says, okay, now it's up to you, I've told you what's the path which is going to elevate you, which is path to infamy, etc. It reminds me of when I was on back program and I was quite disturbed and bewildered about something. I was a bit frustrated and see a way forward. I went to one of the back leaders and asked him what to do. He says, use your intelligence. I said, well, I don't have any. He said, well, use someone else's intelligence. And that seems to be the essential teaching, isn't it? The Guru Parampara. We don't have any brain. From beginning to end, the shower of born in the darkness of ignorance. The spiritual master opens our eyes with torchlight of knowledge. Of course, that's not just limited to the initiating spiritual master, because if it's limited to that, then ISKCON wouldn't be running this cooperatively. After many of the spiritual masters, they will say that if you want to follow me, then follow the local authorities. But even beyond just like authority, not just an authoritative regime or something, but it's taking advice from someone who you trust knows better than you, or you think can see further along the path, or you may have gone along that path. There's no shortage of association of devotees in ISKCON. And we all need that. There's nobody exempt from that devotee association. It's a good point, that you make about taking advantage of the intelligence of someone else. Because otherwise, the alternative is what? We're just proud and we think we don't need to hear from anybody. We don't need to learn from anybody.
Yeah, either that or we just end up being miserable and just we just we're miserable and then we, like a sick cow in the barn, and starts to pervade everybody else as well. And then it just becomes like, just like Manidas says, it just becomes like a society of miserable people.
Yeah, that's not so attractive.
Did you have your hand up, Atokshya, or maybe you had your hand up, were you pointing at Prabhupada? Okay.
There was just a comment about the Sri Rama was saying the tipping point from the Shikshastik verse to now Krishna Chinara verse to the fourth stage to Nishna. It's the stage of humility. So the tipping point really for everything from being how they usually was just the point where you go to pride. That's when you're humility. Intolerance is also referred to by Bhagavatam as being forgiving. So you find yourself forgiving people very easily and seeing them as bad than yourself. You shift over into Nishna, imagine Madhikara from that point. To endorse yourself from the start to what challenges can you get through an ultimately to the stage of being humble.
Could you just say what, in summary, what you were saying there, Prabhu? I'm sorry, not being intelligent enough. Could you just say what?
Shikshastik and Sri Rama's been doing, he says the first two verses reflect the first four stages, and then the third stage, Nishna, is the third verse of the Shikshastik. So he says the tipping point for devotees will be the point where they become humble, because that's when the holy name will give you mercy. Up until then you're chanting, but you're offending the holy name. So when you're chanting and serving, actually with real humility, and that's when the mercy really starts to come. And then you go from Nishna to Ruchi very, you go to Ruchi very quickly because the level of devotees has been of such a high caliber. You're very, very rapid advancement. But it's just how long is it going to take before you get up pride?
Yeah. Okay. Rancha Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Gaura Premanandi, Puruna Bhavan Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. It's amazing. That was like the Prabhupada Leela Rita was all about. It's about
I find it all happens quite often between Prabhupada Leela and Bhagavatam as well, this connection.
but on the first day of Kartik as well.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Sorry? Not really. I don't think so. Maybe. Yes, I was just putting my whole weight on there. I couldn't lift myself up. What is the food here?
Especially on the outside.
Because inside I've done this.
I don't say it's done too bad. Not to check. From the inside once you've done it. Right now you're going to do that. So you get half those.
How did you know? How can I tell on the Facebook here?
Take the future you guys.
Because we are still on and like now we turn it up.
Gaura, 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 You work it out?
I tried to find the page here, it's not anywhere the page.
It's escape.
Escape,
Escape.
yeah. Have to go where? Does anyone know how to turn on the Facebook here?
Usually it's gets left on until Ragnar
Yeah.
comes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it's on.
That's okay. Good. Oh,
My scribbly handwriting.
rituals as well, just like with the bomb. I had like kind of ghee things on top. Yeah.
It just
It was like,
yeah, I think it is. Is that? Yeah, it actually does. It's just in case somebody throws them out, you know.
oh, yes.
Maybe it was.
Maybe
that's
I don't know, Mihai had them.
Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama